Okay, so briefly, some background on this. Scott Ritter has been saying some really controversial things lately. Now, I want to make it clear. Uh, I used to really respect Scott Ritter, and I respected his analysis, but that has been dramatically been diminishing in recent times. I want to show you a video, and in fact, I'm going to actually be going more in depth about this video in another video. But I want to give you guys a little bit of a background on what's been going on with Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter has been flip-flopping. He's been reversing his position, actually contradicting himself and contradicting things he said in the past. But let's just watch this video to get an idea of where we're at right now.
Right.
Okay, so this was made by Jamarl Thomas. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So let's watch it.
I want to move on to another story. Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter. In full transparency, I contacted Ritter because I wanted to have a conversation with Ritter about some of the things that Ritter has been saying, especially on the issue of Iran. I had a conversation with Morandi. Him and I talked about it. Morandi gave his point of view. I wanted to bring Ritter on in full transparency to have a conversation. Ritter will no longer come on this show. And he said, paraphrasing, I have decided to um, basically overhaul whose shows I go on to. And effectively, your show isn't one of them that I'm coming on to. Fair enough. Ritter has every right. It's his choice, just like it's my choice on whose show to go on to. That said, since I don't have him on the show, I would use the previous interview that he had with Glenn Deason as my framework to discuss his, let's say, evolution in point of view that he has effectively taken on the issue of Gaza, but specifically in this case, on the issue of Iran.
Okay, so this is over 17 minutes long. I just wanted to play that a little bit to get you guys up to speed. So how did we get to this point? So Scott Ritter has been basically saying that Trump is going to nuke Iran. But more than that, and this is the thing I wanted to address, he believes that Trump is going to use nuclear bunker busters on Iran. And, there's been a lot of controversy about what Scott Ritter has been saying and, the motives behind it. So let's look a little bit on how we got to that point. So Scott Ritter was on Jamarl Thomas's show and talking and giving his analysis on Iran. But then Jamarl had other people on his show to push back on the stuff that Scott Ritter said because it didn't sit right with a lot of people. A lot of people believed it was wrong. So let's watch this video here. Again, just going to be a little bit of it.
Iran will say, nope, Israel's a dangerous country and we have to change things. So now what do? You got to get rid of Iran's nuclear program. There's no debate about this. And I know the Iranians are like, that's our sorry. Guys, you're about to be nuked. There, I said it. You see, when Donald Trump was president last time, he was confronted with this problem. How do you deal with Iran's nuclear program? And the idea was to conventionally take it out. The problem is some of these targets are deeply buried. We don't have conventional weapons that can do this. So we developed, under Donald Trump's instructions, new classes of nuclear weapons. They're low-yield nuclear weapons, but designed to penetrate underground bunkers. A new design of the B-61 gravity bomb and the W-76-2 low-yield warhead delivered by the Trident missile off of a submarine. These weapons will take out Iran's nuclear infrastructure.
Okay, so this is what's been going on in the news. Donald Trump has been threatening Iran with being attacked. Trump has been saying, get rid of your nuclear weapons. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. It does have 60% enriched uranium. It has a nuclear program, but they intentionally keep it at a certain breakout window. And Trump has been doing the bidding of Israel. Trump had, and this is contradicting so many things that, we believed, and Trump even said himself, or at least alluded to, that he was no longer going to be fighting Israel's wars for it. Trump and the Jewish supremacists around him, the Zionists, want America to fight Israel's wars for it. So that's what this is about. Now, the weird thing is that Scott Ritter is actually advancing Trump's agenda on this issue. And he believes that Trump is going to not only attack Iran, but Trump is going to use nuclear bunker busters against Iran. Now, there's so much to unpack here, especially regarding Scott Ritter and why he's doing this and what changed. And that's all very interesting. But that's something I want to save for another video, another time. So we're going to revisit that later. For now, let's watch this video, which kind of reiterates what Scott Ritter has been saying. Now, Iran's nuclear facilities are built into a mountain. Okay, so just keep that in mind going forward.
Sometimes people need to be careful what they brag about, because apparently B-2 bombers flew over Yemen and dropped these massive bombs against, underground facilities, and everybody's going, ha, 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 they didn't work. They collapsed the entrance, but the facility lives, and the Yemeni came in through another one. Your big bombs didn't work. This is exactly why Donald Trump has made low yield, ground penetrating nuclear weapons that do work.
Okay, you get the idea. Now, I'm here to tell you, I actually don't believe that nuclear bunker busters will work. So let's take a look at these mountains here. So, as I said before, Iran's nuclear production facilities are built into a mountain. Mountains like this. I just Googled Iranian mountains, and this is what came up. Very beautiful. But these are like fortresses. Think of these as like giant slabs of armor. I mean, look at the mountain ranges. And also, look at the slope. Look at how steep that slope is. This is like angled armor. Okay. Now, with that said, bunker busters are actually very, very impressive. There was a guy named Curious Droid who made a video, not to be confused with Curious George. Curious Droid made a video talking about bunker buster bombs, and if you want to learn more in depth about bunker buster bombs, I recommend you watch this video. Let's watch a little bit of it to get an idea of how bunker buster bombs work.
Ever since we learned to fight, we have striven to protect our most important places. But with modern weapons, is there a safe place anymore? The most secure places we could build, hardened and secure and even nuclear bunkers, are now vulnerable to bunker busting weapons that can go clean through 20 feet or 6 meters of reinforced concrete. They can even count the number of floors they punch through to make sure they detonate in exactly the right place. But like every war, it's a battle between two sides.
Okay, so you saw those videos of the bunker buster bombs just penetrating through solid concrete. And this is reinforced concrete. But even Curious Droid admits that modern Iranian reinforced concrete is much, much stronger than the reinforced concrete you're seeing in this video. Now, this is damn impressive by itself. Like, how the hell can a weapon punch through ground and earth and reinforced concrete like that and come out on the other side intact, that's extremely impressive. I want to show you this, and this is probably the most effective, the most capable bunker buster in the world. And that's the GBU 57 MOP, as I like to call it, the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. Not to be confused with the Moab, which is the mother of all bombs. This is different. This thing can only be dropped by a very large bomber like the B-2 Spirit. And it has a penetration, it's saying, of 200 feet or 61 meters, but I don't know if that's reinforced concrete or earth. Other people have looked at this and they said that it can't be 61 meters of reinforced concrete. That's just not possible. So probably an overstatement. Now, I need to make it very clear. So Scott Ritter's talking a lot about how regular bunker busters won't work, but nuclear bunker busters will. Now, that's a very strong claim. Now, you have to understand that the only difference between a regular bunker buster and a nuclear bunker buster is the explosive contained inside of it. That's the only difference. Everything else about it, as long as it's using the same kind of bunker buster shell, like let's just use this one, this is the most effective one, that's still the same. So a nuclear bunker buster, just the explosive inside would be different. It would be a nuclear explosive, and it would be tactical yield, as Scott Ritter pointed out. So that would be like around 1 kiloton, 2 kilotons, 3 kilotons or so, around there in explosive yield. To put that in perspective, the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, the nuclear bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, was about 14 kilotons of TNT equivalent in nuclear yield, explosive yield. But the way that they work is the same. So in other words, the bunker buster has to penetrate through ground, rock, and reinforced concrete, anything protecting the bunker. It needs to penetrate through all of that, remain intact. And remember, there's a nuclear device inside of this, and nuclear devices are more frail compared to conventional explosives. So it needs to remain intact, and then it needs to explode at a certain depth. Now, here's the reason why I don't believe that this would actually work. First of all, there's actually no evidence at all that bunker busters, nuclear or otherwise, actually work against mountains. Okay? There's no evidence that they work. And as far as I know, it's never been tested against mountains. Have they been tested against reinforced concrete, bunkers? Yeah. When the earth is flat, sure. But against a mountain, the thing is with a mountain, as you're seeing in this photo, is that it is made out of a much harder rock, granite. And the granite is hundreds of meters thick, hundreds. And the surface of the mountain is angled. Okay? And the way that angled armor works is that it can deflect projectiles, but it also means that the projectile has to go through effectively more material, much more. So what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't matter whether it's a nuclear bunker buster or a regular bunker buster. If it doesn't survive the impact with the mountain, it's not going to explode. And I don't believe that it can survive this impact because granite is extremely hard, and when you're building this facility inside of a mountain, it's going to be extremely deep in there. So this armor is hundreds of meters thick of granite armor. And I don't believe it can penetrate through any of that, let alone hundreds of meters of it. Now, there's other problems too. There's other problems. So what you're seeing here is something called a subsidence crater. So it turns out that when a nuclear device explodes underground, it doesn't necessarily create a cavity. What actually happens is it explodes and then the material collapses in on itself almost immediately, creating a subsidence, as you can see from above here. So in other words, a nuclear device doesn't drill into the ground. Even if it were to penetrate into Earth, and when it's detonated, the cavity that's created would collapse in on itself, creating this on the surface. But for a mountain, I feel like it would just get deflected. But let's just assume somehow it's able to penetrate through. This is what would happen, and that's it. And it wouldn't penetrate hundreds of meters of granite. Now, there are some exceptions to this. I want to direct your attention to this. This is Project Gnome. This was an underground nuclear test where they detonated a nuclear device that was about 3 kilotons, so around the yield that you would find in a tactical nuclear weapon. And this one did create a cavity, but there's some major caveats with that. For one thing, well, before I get to that one thing, let me tell you about the cavity that was created. The cavity that was created, I got this right here. So this shows you a little bit about what happened with this. So they actually drilled really deep into the ground, over 1,000 feet deep. As you can see, this is the depth in feet, over 1,000 feet deep. They drilled down and then they detonated this nuclear device. It's saying 1,183 feet below the surface. And then they detonate the nuke. It was about 3 kilotons and it created a large cavity. Let's see. The Gnome detonation created a cavity about 170 feet, 52 meters wide, 90 feet or 27 meters high. So decent. However, this was detonated not inside of a mountain. Remember, this is flat Earth. And the composition of what this stuff was made out of, it was detonated inside of a rock salt formation, whatever the hell you call it. In other words, not granite, because this was not inside of a mountain. This was just, they dug a really, really deep hole. And this is actually, let me see, let's get this image resized here. There we go. So you get an idea. So this was the cavity that was created. Okay, and it's kind of hard to see, but this is actually a guy. This is a man standing in here. So pretty impressive cavity that was created by this nuke. But this, where they detonated the nuke was inside of like rock salt. It wasn't granite, and it was very, very deep. And that difference makes all the difference. So it was placed 361 meters underground. So this, in order to achieve a cavity, the nuke has to be detonated at a extremely deep depth. And I can't even assume necessarily that the cavity would hold even regardless of the depth. But you're kind of getting the point. There's no way in hell that a bunker buster, nuclear or not, can dig 361 meters all by itself. And you can't drill with them either. Okay? That's not how bunker busters work. As I pointed out, even if it could survive the impact with the mountain, you would get a explosion which temporarily creates a cavity, but then the cavity collapses. And before you say, oh, you can just throw a nuke inside of that temporary cavity and then penetrate and detonate a hole inside of a hole, that won't work because you would have to be dropping your bunker buster inside of a nuclear explosion. The nuclear explosion is going to linger for a little while, and it can't. Uh, the second bunker buster and any subsequent bunker busters will not survive um, nuclear energy. Being thrown inside of nuclear energy, let alone the hundreds of meters of hard granite. So it just won't work. And then, just for fun, someone calculated how many 10 kiloton explosions it would take to destroy Mount Cheyenne. This comes from a website called Project Rho Atomic Rocket, which is a great website for hard science fiction and stuff like that. Uh, Basically, the context this arises in is there's a book written by Robert A. Heinlein called The Moon is Harsh Mistress, and in it they throw essentially rocks that have a they impact with Earth, and when they impact, it releases so much energy equivalent to 10 kilotons, a 10 kiloton nuke. So uh, how many 10 kiloton explosions, shots would it take to destroy Mount Cheyenne, which happens in the novel? Well, this guy did a calculation, and it would take 200,000 of these 10 kiloton explosions to destroy Mount Cheyenne. Just to get an idea of like how rugged a mountain is. So what I'm trying to tell you is that nuclear bunker busters probably won't work. Okay? I've never seen a single test. I've never seen any evidence of any test on a mountain. And why is that? Because they don't work. They don't work. It doesn't matter whether it's nuclear or not because the bunker buster has to survive the impact and penetrate into the rock and then explode. And I don't believe it can. I think it would be destroyed on impact. And even if it did explode, then there's all the other issues I talked about. It just wouldn't work. So anyway, I wanted to make this video to kind of throw cold water on the claims that Scott Ritter is making because they're very provocative, and they're assuming with absolute certainty that these nuclear bunker busters will destroy Iran's nuclear facilities, which are built into a mountain. And I'm telling you, I don't believe it'll work. Okay. Now, there's a lot of other problems with Scott Ritter, and I'm going to have to address that at a later time in another video because it's all very interesting and honestly, it's all very, very disappointing to hear this stuff coming from Scott Ritter. But we'll get to that when we get to that. See you guys later.